Here on The Colour of Country Life, we're talking with James Jackson, the President of the New South Wales Farmers. How are you going, James?
Not too bad.
We've got a concern that you've raised here. I know it's been around for a few days, this outbreak news that's come out of Indonesia of foot and mouth disease, but you're concerned this could get to Australia maybe a bit easier than people are saying.
Well, yeah, there is potential. I mean, it creates a greater risk, if you like, of it coming over the border. It probably will come through an airport rather than sort of across Torres Strait, but it means that there's another sort of route, if you like, that it could come into Australia, and it's a serious disease. They did a bit of a back of the envelope arrangement. ABARES did in 2013, and they thought a big outbreak could cost upwards of 54 billion. Now, the price of livestock have gone up significantly by then. So I think it could cost upwards of $100 billion if we get into the country, and if it's serious, if we get a big outbreak.
Well, there's been a big restock on, hasn't there, including in the Riverina, a lot of stock being added as well in Queensland too. The numbers are so huge, it could be really bad if that got through our flock.
Oh, absolutely, and it sort of infects. There's a number of species that foot and mouth can go through. It's ungulates or cloven-hoofed animals, pigs, goats, deer, buffalo, cattle, sheep. It's a significant swathe of our animal industries, if you like, that potentially could be affected by this. And the big effect is a trade effect. We will be excluded from a number of markets for some time if we get this into the country.
Now, I should clarify, you're a vet with some experience in this area. When it comes to foot and mouth, is it more dangerous as well or more prevalent during the colder months in Australia too?
No, it can be at any time of the year. In fact, spread has increased. In very humid conditions, actually, the spread can be more significant. So it's not sort of a seasonal thing at all. Not like COVID or the flu, but it is an RNA virus. It's a little RNA virus, and it can spread. It's very contagious. It has famously spread across the English Channel on a fog. So that's 20-odd miles. So it can spread if there's certain circumstances quite significantly. Most of the spread internally would be animal-to-animal contact, so it would be sort of quite close contact. But there is the possibility of viral flumes, if you like, out of a feedlot or something like that, that could infect animals for, a number of miles away. So it is significant, and responding to it would really stretch a number of our authorities right to the limit.
Yeah, you've made some important comments about biosecurity on that, but I just thought I'd ask before we touch on that, like feral animals, you mentioned some of the species that can transmit to. What's the risk if we don't have those sort of running about, if we don't control the number that's running about with our flocks in our regional areas?
Well, yeah, look, feral animals, it is interesting, the role of pigs. I mean, pigs actually are big virus replicators. They do get the disease, but they don't have a carrier status. So a lot of the epidemiologists don't think feral pigs will be a huge, cause of disseminating the disease. That doesn't mean they can't. But they're more concerned about, the domestic animals going through sale yards. Essentially, after they go through sale yards, if they go back out and they're restocker animals, they go everywhere.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the Federal Agriculture Minister made a funding announcement about controlling deer in the southeast of South Australia. That sounded like one species you nominated could be a transmitter.
They can be, yeah, definitely. And look, deer and pigs certainly do potentially transmitted, and certainly management programs of those is eminently sensible. If not for foot and mouth disease, for African swine fever, and things like leptospirosis. So there's a number of reasons why you'd want to control feral pigs, and foot and mouth is one of them, certainly. But
now, you've expressed concern, though, about the adequacy of Australia's biosecurity arrangements, though. We see plenty come from Agriculture Minister David Littleproud regularly saying they're putting funding for this or that for biosecurity. Is it too ad hoc for New South Wales farmers' liking?
Well, we sort of certainly put the pressure on. I mean, I think we've put the pressure on to get that $400 million for port biosecurity and inboard biosecurity, if you like, from products. We still need a sustainable funding model for that. It shouldn't come out of consolidated revenue. The importers really should be paying a container tax. So that piece of work hasn't been finished yet, but there has been an increase in funding for that recently, and we welcome that. However, what we've got to do is get a coordinated funding effort. And to be fair to David Littleproud, he did put together a discussion paper for developing a national biosecurity strategy. Now, that's actually quite important because the states have a role, the federal government have a role, local government have a role, and it's actually, although we have response plans and the EADRA agreement that sort of dictates or informs people who does what where in an exotic disease outbreak, we still don't have a coordinated sort of funding effort. We've still got this situation where if there's a disease come into the country, the federal government sort of has responsibility until it gets out of the port, and then the state government takes it over. So people can, essentially encourage something to go further because it'll be on somebody else's balance sheet. And ultimately it ends up on farmers' balance sheets, to control those imports. So that's the problem. We don't have a coordinated sort of approach to biosecurity. That has to happen.
And I noticed that the government has said they won't introduce any new taxes. They might be squeamish about introducing that one. Mind you, it's one for a specific purpose, but we haven't heard anything from Labor on this front either, and they could be the ones in government after the 21st of May.
That's correct. That is correct, and I would encourage both sides of politics to turn their mind to biosecurity. The impact on this, it could actually take 1% off GDP. $100 billion cost to the economy is significant, and that's the sort of scale of the potential cost to the economy. I mean, meat processing, red meat processing, is the biggest secondary industry in the country now. And essentially that would be in chaos for some time. With a foot and mouth outbreak, with these standstills that we've got. There wouldn't be any processing. There'd still be some domestic processing, but that export processing would just collapse overnight. We'd have animal welfare issues, with holding stock on hand. We've got problems with response capacity, exactly how to, deal with an outbreak if we got it into the country. We've got surveillance problems. We've got to get coordinated surveillance to make sure we do serology and monitoring vectors, for lumpy skin disease, some of these other diseases. We've got to get a coordinated approach in this country. Otherwise, we will get overwhelmed with one of these diseases, because Indonesia has recently announced that they've got lumpy skin disease up there too, which is a serious trade disease as well for the cattle industry. So we've got a number of these challenges, if you like, and our biosecurity system is not terrible. But I don't want to intimate that it's terrible, but it could be a whole lot better.
Yeah, James, just lastly, I know that Australian farmers across the board have somewhat been fortunate out of others' misfortune when it comes to prices and farm gate prices on the trading market. Is this is there an upside for our exporters when it comes to Indonesia if they've got this disease and they'll have concerns about consumption?
Yeah, I don't think we'll make any money out of this. No, I don't think so. And our authorities will be helping the Indonesians get this under control.
Yeah, I think they've sent some vaccines over there already to get that rolling.
Yeah, it's in our interest for the Indonesians to get on top of this as quick as possible. So we'll be certainly helping them out there. I think the idea that benefiting off other people's grief is, it's morally questionable. But in this case, I don't think there's any opportunity for us either. They're net importers of meat, Indonesia. They're not huge exporters. So I don't think there's sort of huge opportunity, if you like, to increase live exports or chilled meat exports to Indonesia. It doesn't it does affect animals. It does have an impact on animals, but the major effect of this disease is a trade disease.
The border's closing and we can't get into markets.
Yeah. That's right. So a domestic market is not going to be disrupted that much at all, because there's no problems with eating the meat or anything. It's fine. But, and essentially if we had an outbreak in Australia, the animals with it would be dispatched. We'd dispose them and we'd slaughter them, and then we'd ring vaccinate around the outbreak. I mean, that would be the process. And the animals are eminently usable, but the animals with it, I mean, you destroy them. But, those vaccinated animals are usable and not for domestic consumption, for sure. But the our export markets certainly would have reservations about taking those animals. And that's why we've done so well in North Asia, because the South Americans have struggled to get control of foot and mouth disease. It's endemic there, and that's been a big trade advantage for us into North Asia. So if we lose that advantage, it's certainly significant.
All right, James, thanks for providing some expertise there from your veterinary background on foot and mouth disease. Much appreciated, and hopefully we'll hear a bit more about biosecurity in the remaining days before the 21 May federal election.
Yeah, they've got to get focused on it. Both sides have got to get focused on it, and there are some levers that you can pull to stop these diseases getting into the country. So I'd encourage both sides to look at it.
Thanks again, James. We'll catch you again soon.